Good evening, and welcome to this. Whenever you're listening to it, my name is Ever Curdy, and tonight I wanted to talk about a very serious subject matter. And these are just some general thoughts that I have regarding a certain aspect in synastry and astrology. But before I do, I just want to take a TikTok so that my breath is fresh. Alrighty. So what Synastry is it is a type of astrology that is sort of put in place, and it exists, first of all, to illustrate the relationship dynamics between two people. Now, we're not just talking about sun sign compatibility here. We are talking about the whole scope of the natal birth chart. I'm talking this person's birth chart and this other person's birth chart and how they match up, how they get along with each other, how they compare to one another. And so this is what synastry is. How this person's planetary alignments and degrees and planets and signs and houses compare to what this person has going on in their natal chart. I mean, it's all relative and it all depends. But what's important to remember is that there is significations between maybe this person's, say you have Venus at 12 degrees of Leo, and then this person's Mars is at 12 degrees of Leo, or around 12 degrees of Leo. Therefore, one person's Venus would be conjunct another person's Mars. Or say your sun is in Leo and their moon is in the sign of Taurus at around 5 degrees. And so in synastry, your sun would be squaring their moon. Because squares are when you have Leo and Taurus, they're both fixed signs, they're not opposite each other, they're not the same sign, so they square each other. That's more difficult. That represents some conflict and some obstacles that are sort of put in place for the relationship that require hard work, perseverance, and both people to not have their head in the clouds and face the truth of what's going on, and willing to grow and learn from one another and teach one another that wisdom. So say if it's an opposition, then you have sort of one going in one direction, the other going in another direction. If someone's Mercury is at 10 degrees of Capricorn, opposite Saturn at 10 degrees of Cancer, then they would be opposites. One's person's Mercury and Capricorn would have a plan, be very, pragmatic. I mean, whatever it is, they would be going in two different directions. They would be opposing one another. There would be conflict, where it's about finding that sweet spot, finding that compromise, merging, the best of both worlds and infusing the two flavors into one another to create a beautiful marriage. That's the whole point of a marriage. You have one person and doing a dance of reciprocity with another. Just like, you can't have a pasta dish without the pasta and the sauce. You can't have a meal without food and drink. Salt goes with pepper. It takes two to tango. Now, if there is an aspect in synastry, now that I don't have to give you, examples, because I hope that you understand, where there's trines, this is beautiful energy. The trines bring out a lot of good qualities of whatever planets and signs that they are in. They represent, to me, luck and joy and an abundant, yummy energy of gratitude. That's to me what trines represent. Is it feels comfortable. It feels delicious, and I'm, feeling pretty comfortable and pretty good. That's what trines are. Now, they can not be the best for, well, I'm presenting you these lessons so that you can grow from me, but they do present beautiful chemistry and a beautiful relationship between one person and another, that you can really just flow and get along. Trines represent flowing. Whenever you see a trine in synastry, you know that the two will get along in that aspect of the chart. There may be other more difficult aspects going on, but for that particular piece of it, if we were to separate the whole puzzle, then those two people would get along in that respect. With the trine, it would feel comfortable or familiar. Especially if, let's say, someone's Mercury was on someone's, was trying someone's south node. That south node represents familiarity. It represents, okay, well, you are bringing me something and you are communicating in a way that actually feels quite familiar to me. Like in some past lifetime, this is similar to how I communicated. This is similar to how I spread my messages or, thought things out or, shared my information or sort of went about my day-to-day life. And you can do past life regressions to find out who you actually were in a past lifetime, what you actually did, if you resonate and believe in that aspect of it. And I question whether or not I believe in that too, but I think it would be really neat to do a past life regression and get a past life reading as to who I was in the previous lifetime. And if that reading matches up with the sign and house placement of my South Node in Scorpio in the 11th house of friendship and community and networking. So, that South Node represents what we're coming in with, what we're very familiar with, and so what we're used to. So maybe we just get this feeling like, oh, we know this person before. We've had conversations with these types of people before. We've chatted before. Or, I don't know how it's going to pan out. But anyway, the trine represents something just beautiful. Now, that's what the trine is. Now, there's sextiles, which, you have a window of opportunity. There was an astrologer who had a metaphor for sextiles, like if you have an aspect in synastry, like one person's moon is sextile another person Jupiter. The sextile represents sort of a window, an opening of opportunity that you can take advantage of, and you can sort of take, let's say someone's moon is in Cancer and Jupiter is in Taurus, and so sextiles occur when planets are either in water and earth or air or fire. So the two planets are having sex, if you will. They're getting along, they're bonding. And so this is an aspect of compromise. You're discussing things, you're coming up with solutions. It's a more productive aspect, it's really positive. It provides you an opportunity that you need to take action towards, but overall the sextile is positive. And the conjunction is where you have one planet in a synastry meeting up with another person's something going on in their natal chart in synastry, and you can just shine a spotlight on those two planets. The focus gets right down to those two planets meeting up in the same sign. The sign becomes the star of the show, and this planet in this sign and what this represents in alignment with this other planet in this same sign comes together. The signs are the same. The only difference is, well, you have the whole rest of the chart. You have one person's chart, which is totally different from the other person's chart. But then you have the different meanings of the planets. Now, I explain all that because, let's say that this is a real life example. I know someone very personally in my life. Get this. I've known this person for a very, very long time. An incredibly long time. Many, many years. And as of May 7th of this year, I remember the date very, very clearly. I knew this person's natal chart. I knew where this person's Saturn was placed, but I wasn't sure about the degree. And so, considering the nature of the relationship, that over the years there have been some fights, some arguments, and overall there's been some hard lessons to learn and growing pains. Just to give you a little overview, I'm going to discuss more, because this is personal to me. I was going on a natal chart calculator, just putting in this person's information, and lo and behold, this person had the exact same degree. This person's Saturn was at the exact same degree as my sun sign, as how I express myself, my sort of creative fuel tank. The sun is like the generator that, provides the light. It gives you life force and vitality, and it's up to you to sort of exercise in that direction and step into the qualities of that sign. And I believe that you become whatever your sun sign is as you grow older. So this person's Saturn was at 16 degrees of Aries. The exact same degree as my natal sun. And when I found this out, I was blown away. I was stunned. I was kind of floored, and I was like, well, that is very meaty. That explains a lot. That is really a piece of work that speaks volumes. I mean, that kind of goes deep. If there is one answer for the certain problems in the relationship that have been going on for many, many years, with a lot of positive dynamics going on with, the fun, the memories, the conversations that we've had, all of it, it really, for me, summed up why so many times I would see this person. I would come to this person's house and there would be arguments. There would be fights. There would be tension. There would be conflict. There would be divide. All these kinds of things. And right there, it seemed to be solid evidence. Now, I'm not saying that, to freak out if this person's Saturn is the exact same sign and degree as your sun. I'm not saying that aspect in synastry, if your sun sign at a certain, your sun in a certain sign in a certain degree is conjunct this person's Saturn at a certain sign in a certain degree, is doomed to failure and it's, bad. I'm also not saying to take one aspect of synastry and say, oh, this is the be all end all. I am sure that there are a lot of positive things. What I will say is that our Mars are in opposite signs. My Mars is in Gemini. My Mars is in Gemini, and this person's Mars is in Sagittarius. My Jupiter is in Virgo. This person's Jupiter is in Pisces. My Saturn's in Cancer. This person's Saturn's in Aries. So Cancer and Aries square one another in astrology because they're both cardinal signs. They're not the same sign. They're not opposite one another. Our lunar nodes are exactly opposite to each other, around about the same degree. I think my north node and south node are both at 11 degrees. I think this person's north node and south node is either 9 and 10 degrees, so pretty much in that vicinity of opposing one another. And I think that the north node and south, okay, so let's say in synastry, your north node, this is my example. My north node is in Taurus, my south node is in Scorpio. My south node is in Scorpio. This person's north node is in Scorpio. This person's south node is in Taurus. They're opposite. I really have some appreciation for when your south node is conjunct this person's north node and when their north node is conjunct their south node. Talk about a beautiful aspect for the fact that we teach and learn from one another at the same time. That maybe if you I know of a lot of people with the South Node in Taurus and North Node in Scorpio, and I am very fascinated by that placement. I have a lot of respect and curiosity into those particular people. I'm fascinated with them and their life experiences. I want to know more about the particular placements of the North Node in Taurus and South Node in Scorpio because they are exactly opposite my own. And because what they are leading into with the North Node in Scorpio is so familiar to me. I can go on talking about this. And I'm going to liberate myself entirely and spend as much time as I want to talking about what I want to talk about here. Now, I think that the synastry aspect, if you have your south node in a given sign and their north node and the other person's north node in the same sign as your south node and right around or at the same degree, conjunct. So your south node is conjunct their north node and vice versa. Their south node is conjunct your north node. I think that maybe you were meant to be karmically just put together with this person. Like the universe was trying to put you in with this person, trying to put you together for a profound spiritual reason. And I'm recording this under Venus retrograde, where the people that you meet, and especially the relationships that you have, especially, marriage, romantic relationships, may be more karmic. We're more meant to be on the spiritual level, or more profound on the spiritual level. Maybe they relate back to past lifetimes and past karma. All these kind of things are, on the table. But you are teaching, the South Node, you've mastered your South Node. You are so good at your south nodes you can do it without even thinking about it. It's just your unconscious and tendencies, your default. You can revert back to your south node. You can basically do it blindfolded. You can do it in your sleep. And so you are teaching the wisdom and the gifts and the knowledge of all those lifetimes that you have learned these South Node lessons. And then you can teach that on to somebody else. And then you can learn from their South Node lessons and wisdom to move into your North Node. And they can learn from your South Node sign to move into their North Node. Their North Node is exactly opposite their South Node. So there is both familiarity and difference at the same time. It's opposition, and I truly believe that with a South Node, your South Node in a given sign conjunct their North Node in a given sign, or opposing your South Nodes in a given sign opposite the other person's South Node in this given sign. And the same goes for the North Node. I truly believe that with that aspect, opposites do attract with that particular one. Now, you throw in other aspects going on in Synastry in the natal birth chart, and you may have a different picture. And I do not believe that that particular aspect that we may share with one another, my South Node in Scorpio is right around the same degree as this person's North Node in Scorpio. I don't want to believe that that aspect is what wowed me and explains some of the more difficult aspects of what is going on in this relationship that I have with this person. I think that you can boil it down to this person's Saturn is conjunct my sun, literally the exact same degree. I am not making this up. It's as if I went to some event in the Hunger Games, and Effie Trinket from the Hunger Games dipped her finger into a basket of pieces of paper. What did she pull out? Well, I have my sun at 16 degrees. Come on up. Everett Curdy, who has his sun at 16 degrees of Aries. Come on up. Effie Trinket says, let's see who you're going to be paired with. She dips inside the bucket and pulls out another piece of paper, and she says, anyone who has their Saturn in Aries at 16 degrees, come on up. And, everyone coming to this event should know their natal birth charts and know the signs, the degrees, the houses, and a general understanding of their aspects of what is going on in the natal birth chart. Maybe not their whole aspects, or maybe the people at this event, where they're standing around, and they're getting called or summoned by Effie Trinket. In this case, maybe all the people standing in the audience waiting to potentially get called up have their natal charts in their hand, and they're looking at the signs, the degrees, and the houses of their placements in their natal birth chart and the aspects between them. And so they are getting called. They have their little map to look at right there, and they are getting called up based off of whatever, the luck of the draw, or the devil is in the paper, whatever Effie Trinket pulls out of that basket, no matter who it is, they have to come up because they've been called. And so you will be paired up with this person. It's like, I'm wondering what the universe was thinking when I was born into this world, and I had this, and continue to have this long-term relationship with somebody whose Saturn is at 16 degrees of Aries, the exact same degree of my sun. I truly meant that it was fated. It was probably a soul agreement. It was meant to be. And I was probably came here to learn some serious lessons when it comes to Aries from this particular person. And so I cannot express how amazing and how random it is. Like, out of all the degrees, out of all the aspects that there could be, when I reflect on the nature of the relationship, this is what is going on. This is what's going on. And so when it comes to, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert here on Saturn in um in Aries, but I will just give you a couple ideas here. Is that Saturn wants to put a boundary to something. It wants to put a restriction to something. It wants to put a limit to whatever it touches. It demands maturity. It demands discipline. It demands that you be the best that you can be. You be the master of it. You grow. You persist. You work hard. It is really there to like say, hey, you need to go through the hard knocks lessons in your life. And there's great value to be learned in these hard lessons through all this hard work that you're doing. It also represents like the father figure. Like, I'm only going to give you this, and I'm only going to reward you with this if I see your karmic debt that you paid off. If I see the work that you have done to be able to receive this award, get this award, and then you can have this. So there is a limit to the awards and rewards and benefits and privileges that Saturn gives you. Like, Saturn says, okay, well, this is a privilege that you have earned from your hard work. Because you have done this and you have done this work, I'm going to ease off on you, and I'm going to give you a little bit of reward, not too much. I don't want to spoil you, like that, parent figure. I don't want to spoil you, but I'm giving you a little bit to sort of munch on, but don't rest on your laurels, says Saturn. Continue to work hard. So Saturn, in your relationship, really can be very authoritative. It can be very direct. It gives, direction, like this is, what needs to happen, and you need to be this. It can put limitations, and it can test you to be, who you are, and it can have you learning some very profound, powerful, spiritual lessons for you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Now, the downside is that you feel restricted, inhibited, and you feel like you can't fully express yourself. And maybe that is how I have been feeling. I say certain things, there's arguments that get stirred up, and yeah, so I would say for the Saturn and Aries person, if you have Saturn and Aries, you have got to fall in love with you, accept yourself exactly as you are. You need to embrace your inner fire and be true to yourself. Know yourself. You need to understand that actually being authentic and being assertive is the way to go. If there is any limiting belief that says that asserting yourself, self-love, putting your needs and wants first, pursuing whatever goal that you want to, um, speaking your truth, going after what you want is selfish and self-centered and wrong, then those beliefs need to, those limitations need to come down and they need to be released. Because self-love and all those kinds of things like that is not selfish. It's only selfish when it comes from a place of ego and narcissism because you do not feel secure in who you are. And so maybe the Saturn and Aries person is maybe more prone to expressing some of the shadow sides of Aries when you have anger and it flares up out of nowhere because you didn't address the anger and you sat on it and you feel like you don't have enough power to stand up for yourself and you're in a situation where you feel like you don't have the power. There's more people that are more powerful than you can't get what you want no matter how hard you try. There is a lesson to be learned with a healthy sense of ego and a healthy sense of conflict. Conflict and self-expression and authenticity and all those things are necessary at certain times. When conflict and actually the two people being in their truth, speaking their truth, can actually win over peace and love and harmony that comes from the two people not being people-pleasing or passive aggression or self-sacrificing or victim or martyrdom or lying to themselves or not valuing themselves, but they come from a place, this love in this relationship, this harmony comes from the two people respecting and valuing and loving themselves, being true to themselves. And your life lesson to learn is how to assert your boundaries and be true to yourself and empower yourself. And so, what can end up happening in my mind is maybe you could enter in a relationship. Maybe I'm making an assumption and I want to make this loud and clear. Oh, you know what? I've been restricted my whole life. So you know what? I'm going to restrict this person now. I've been restricted, so this is exactly the way that I'm going to treat this person. I'm going to give them the difficult treatment that I had growing up. Because Saturn really relates to, wounds that can stem from childhood. It can relate to a certain area of life where you feel challenged and you feel held back in some way where you couldn't embrace this part of yourself, that you couldn't achieve and be this part of yourself. But there was something holding you back. There was some sort of block or barrier. And, sort of a hurdle that you need to get over, a wall that you sort of need to climb over or tear down and break through that wall. That's, just generally what, Saturn's about. It's just the effort that you can do on your own to break through that wall, to get through those barriers. Now, it is not about projecting the shadow sides of Aries and projecting that restriction onto someone else. That maybe you see the parts of their sun sign say your Saturn's in a certain sign and then you're in a relationship with sun sign, maybe you're drawn away from this person's sun, or you don't like the qualities, or you're just overwhelmed by the qualities of this person's sun, or you think it's just wrong and you're floored and amazed and you're just blown away by how this person's living their life, and you're like, no, this person should not go about their life this way. It is wrong. And I'm gonna change this person. I'm gonna fix this person. I'm gonna put a limit on this person. I'm gonna, put a structure to this person. You know, all those kinds of things like that. And maybe you can do that inadvertently and unconsciously. And that may be something to really, really turn some awareness on. Is when, if you're the Saturn person in a relationship, if you limit them unconsciously. And then how does this Sun person feel? Does the Sun person feel empowered and have a solid rock of reliability to lean on via the Saturn person, like a stable base that they can go back to, someone to put them, ground beneath their feet, to provide the stability, to have them express themselves at the, best, most, evolved and mature way. That's something that they would want to receive from this Saturn person? Or is there potential for oil and water and conflict and limitation within the relationship? And so allowing for the Saturn person to allow the Sun person to shine and to be their authentic selves and to learn from the Sun person. And the Sun person's learning from the Saturn person, that's that reciprocity that should happen. Saturn person is not here to mold and shape and form the Sun person into whatever it wants to, just because the Sun person is not living up to the Saturn person's high expectations and standards and demands and limitations, like the Sun person is not enough for the Saturn person, or whatever it is. The relationship is going through a healing, is going through a little bit of a separation, some, wide open spaces. This is sort of neat, wide open spaces, and the two people to reflect if there's any hurt or wound in this relationship, if one person caused a hurt or wound to another. Yeah, so I really thought that I would just come on here and share my thoughts about this, because today I wrote about it in my daily post for the astrology for August 14th, 2023, as Venus conjunct Chiron, Venus trine Chiron, a beautiful aspect for relationship healing. If there's any hurts or wounds, maybe you can reach across the aisle and draw the olive branch and forgive and have healing conversations and come to understand each other and make peace from a place of love and authenticity. And so, yeah, smoothing things over with that beautiful Venus energy, and it's retrograde, so we're reviewing, we're reflecting, we're more internal during a Venus retrograde. And so, that Chiron in air is the wounds that we have for us not being allowed to be and express our authentic, and, for us feeling, not allowed, a wound to our authentic selves. And that's the healing work that we're doing right now, as Chiron is in Aries, and it's going to continue to stay in Aries for the better part of this decade. Chiron in Aries is similar to Saturn in Aries in many ways. So I thought that I would share my thoughts, and bye for now.